In this tutorial we're going to have a little look at customizing your third-party plugins and putting them in a kind of sensible, organized system. So to start with, you need to click at the top left of the screen where it says Logic Pro X and scroll down to Preferences and then the Plugin Manager. This will open up and show you all of the plugins that you have installed on your system and that are available. You can choose to use them or not with this right hand side with it ticked on and off. You can see you can organize it by what the name of the plugin is, or by the manufacturer, all these other things here, which is quite useful. So usually you buy plugins by a certain company. So for example, you buy maybe get some of those Waves plugin deals, and you go down to Waves and you can see all your Waves plugins put in that section when you've got them by the manufacturer. But when you're mixing, that might not be the most useful system in the world, having them by brand rather than by functionality or type. So Logic, for its own native plugins, if I just scroll down, actually I'll scroll up a touch so that we can just get rid of the customizations I've already put in. We can see that you've got amps and pedals, delays, distortions, dynamics, EQs, the kind of vintage subsection, filters, imaging, metering, all these different kind of subfolders, and they're grouped by function rather than by the plugin themselves or the manufacturers or makes and models. But your third-party stuff just tends to come in by manufacturer by default. So you go to audio units, you go to the manufacturer, and you might have, like I've got in this example, I've got lots of compressors, for example, and lots of EQs by different companies. And some are really great, and some just come as part of sort of standard bundles. Or there's some freeware things that I've acquired over the years, etc., on my system. And it's quite nice to have them in a collated, sensible fashion. So you can add your own folder and title it here just by pressing this plus button. And I'll start with a category I haven't done actually. So I can title it, and I'm going to call it 3P for third party, and I'm going to call it granular. So I've got a set of granular effects up here. I'm going to just double click to rename it. I've got to put on caps lock. Granular. So I've got some third-party granular plugins that I want to add into that folder. If I just go above to EQ, third-party EQs here, so I've got some by McDSP, some by Native Instruments, by Plugin Alliance, Waves, etc. And they're all there. And if I want to choose a particular EQ that's a third-party one, I can easily access them that way. Some of them, in some examples and some instances, you might actually want to have an EQ or a certain plugin that falls kind of between two categories. So I have saturators, distortion and harmonic exciters all bundled in together, so that if they're kind of related, they're kind of cousin systems. Same with modulation. I don't have a separate one for phaser, for flanger, for chorus, etc. All of the modulation based plugins kind of go in there. And you can kind of set this up and customize it. Again, technically the DSs and noise filters, they're not exactly the same thing, but they are related. And if we had the noise filters, you could put that in EQs. But chances are, if you're reaching for a particular noise filter to get rid of some problem frequency, and you've got a very specialized one or noise reduction system like I've got there, chances are you're not going to do that with a regular EQ, so you might want a separate system for that. So back to my granular one, if I want to add in a plugin here, let's go to show all. If I know what the plugin is, I can just type for the name of it here. So I'm going to go for Venom, and I can click and drag that and add it to my granular plugin collection. I can clear that system, and then I can also scroll by make and model, name, etc. So I've also got Micron Cascade, which is an amazing granular synthesis sort of plugin, effects processor plugin rather than a soft synth, and I've got those two in there. And then every time I want to do some granular processing, I can just go for one of those two things. Now, this doesn't automatically update every time you add a new plugin. You have to manually update it yourself. So if I go to the top level and show all, there are a few plugins that I haven't added to my system. So I'm going to go for the Bark of Dog. That's a kind of harmonic exciter. saturator type thing. I've got a couple of oscilloscopes, a freeware one and a quite a cheap paid one, and they're both quite decent. So I'm going to put that in my metering and analysis. Oscilloscope, put that in there as well. I also have the absolutely amazing reference works. So I'm going to put that in metering and analysis as well. I've got some Valhalla plugins that I haven't added yet in my third-party reverbs or my modulation. I've got a Waves plugin that was a freebie called Berserk. The distortion, I've got a mono and a stereo version of that. So I'm going to drag those into my saturation, distortion, harmonic exciters. And then finally the Zephyr OTT, which I'm going to add into my third party compressors. And if I go done, then if I want to add an insert here, it starts with my third party things that I've put in here. If I wanted to add in that Berserk distortion, I could pop that in there, and I don't have to go to audio units, remember which company it's made by, and then scroll through all of them this way and try and find that Berserk one, etc. It's much simpler to have your own customized system where it's done by the job it's going to do, or it's categorized by the job it's going to do, rather than going to audio units, Waves, because they do so many. After, if you ever look at their sort of DFS style sofa moving goalposts, constant sale that they have, every now and again, every payday you might chuck $30 their way, and over time you do end up with quite a few of their plugins or anything that does a big kind of bundle, etc. One of the other things I didn't kind of show or didn't talk about actually in the plugin manager, a useful feature if we go to just all of them, you might buy a plugin from a company that only installs the plugin via a huge bundle. So I did this with the Goodhertz Wolf compressor, which is a wicked compressor that my mate Dave showed me, and it comes installed as a bundle. Now I don't have all of those plugins, I've only bought the single one there, so I've decided to deselect all of these and only select the one I'm actually using. So again, even if I did go via the audio units route to try and find them, and if you didn't want to create your own custom folders, etc., you could still only have to scroll through one plugin, the one that you own, rather than the whole bundle. You can, if you're quite brave, actually add them into Logic's internal systems as well. So if I did want just the dynamics and wanted to put all my compressors, my third-party ones and the native ones from Logic in here, I could do that. So let's just find the SSL compressor by Waves. Let's go back to that. So if I wanted the SSL master bus compressor inside my Logic Dynamics, there I could go done. And this time if I go into here, scroll down to Dynamics, I've also got the SSL version in there. So this is kind of following on a little bit from the Pro Tools feature, and it's quite nice the way Pro Tools does it. It doesn't kind of categorize it by manufacturer in the way that Logic does by default. It actually goes, you're a compressor, you're going to live in the compressor folder. But because I've got the Logic native ones that I quite like and the third-party ones that I know and love a lot as well, I've decided to put them into two separate folders and create some different subcategories as well. So I don't want my dynamics all bundled into one thing. I've got my kind of stock third-party compressors in here, but I've also got some specific function-based or job-based things. So I've got some auto sidechain compressors and transient designers that work under a different kind of category, and I've got the DSs as well set up as a different thing along with the noise filters. So I've changed the way that these job functions are kind of done in my workflow, so I haven't fully followed Logic's folder system. The same thing can be done for software instruments. So if you wanted to create your own folder in there, you could do that. So I've got a three-piece synths one, third-party synths. But to be honest, you can get to that by going AU instruments just as easily. And in this instance, personally, I am going for them via the brand. So if I want to go for Native Instruments Massive or Massive X, I know that I'm going to Native Instruments for that, and it's a very easy way to do it. Unlike a plugin for an EQ, for example, I might be looking for a whole host of different EQs. But when it comes to soft synths, manufacturers are kind of easy enough for me to personally navigate. And that's all I wanted to show you in this tutorial.